Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. We are about to get into Behind the Visuals episode 2. In this video, I'm going to primarily go over the very first scene, and just kind of dive into everything I did in it, show you that it's pretty simple, and just show you exactly what I did for it, the different methods I used, what I was going for, all that fun stuff. And I think it's a pretty quick scene, so we might have time to get into some of the first scenes of the track Amalgamation as well. This first one is just that opening scene for the track Boot sequence, which is pretty short, so let's get into it. Alright, this is the project for Boot sequence. This one it's only like a 30-second track because it's like an intro build type deal, and so I really only needed one scene for it. If you look here, it's pretty simple. We just have a cube, some geometry nodes, or that's a cube that I use for geometry nodes, a plane, which is actually what the geometry node stuff is happening on, and then some text. That is literally it. And I'm going to clean up my viewport here so you can see everything better. But I exported this twice because I needed one for the YouTube version and one for the full triple widescreen version for the actual show. So I had it saved as this. And if we look at it here, it's really just a couple of simple elements. And let me put it in like rendered view real quick for you. So essentially, we just have three things. We have this cube, or what was formerly a cube back here. We have the text, and we have these cube guys. And I thought it ended up creating a pretty interesting little visual here, especially when I get the color switch in 1 second. Here, wait for this. I like this part. And then right now it's glitching, of course, but yeah, then it comes back as red, and then it comes back again as orange. So like I mentioned previously in the setup video, like just focusing on the colors here help make it easy. Also, if you're doing text in any of your visuals, it's good to have like a font that you keep coming back to. I am using, let's see here, the font I'm using, oh, this is a mesh now, I believe, but it's called Recharge. I got it off like one of the millions of font websites. If you're going to be like doing anything commercially, make sure the license on the font is not like a you'll be sued if you use this for a commercial project license. Be careful there. I doubt I'll ever get enough views or listens or anything for that to ever be a problem, even if I accidentally did do that. But, just in case, be careful out there. So I'll start with the cube because it's the simplest element by far. This is what it is. Going into edit mode, it's just a stretched out cube that's been subdivided a lot with a displacement modifier on it. And as you can see, it is just animating a bit. I have the amount of the noise texture just kind of making it do weird shapes. And one thing I use these strange cubes and shapes for a ton in the visuals is I don't really use them for how they look exactly. I use them more for reflections, because if you go into here, it's kind of hard to tell there's even anything back there, but it creates all these weird reflections that occur, which I really like and I think looks really cool. So that's mainly what I use like displacement a lot for, and making it animate is so that you get a bunch of strange light bounces throughout the animation, because it makes it seem more glitchy, which is something I was going for personally, more kind of abstract and weird, which I really liked. So that's a fun thing to do, is just kind of have, like, as you can see in the material view, this is literally just a super shiny distorted cube. And also it helped because it was kind of a way to, in the beginning here, mask out everything, so then it like slowly reveals the logo of the album, which is what this one was all about. It's just revealing the title of everything. So that's the first element. Very, very simple. The material for it, literally just a principled with the roughness slammed all the way down to 0, and the displacement amount animated. Next, we have the text. I turn this into a mesh, which if you're not sure how to do that, if you right click on anything, it'll have a convert to setting. and you can convert it to whatever other type of thing you want. So I made this a mesh so I'd have more modifiers available to me. And again, I used a displacement modifier on this, and I just have the strength adjusting. And basically what this allows me to do is just make it so it gets all distorted when it pulls back. So you get like this weird, like jagged edges and everything. So it looks like it's being like sucked back into that like cube back there. And you get all sorts of weird like colors and stuff like that, and like reflections, and it makes it cooler. I think it was cooler than just translating it, or like back and forth, like just moving the location. So I went for using displacement instead of just keyframing the location there, which I thought was pretty cool. And the final element in this piece are these little cubes, and that is a very, 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 very simple geometry node setup. And let me show you what we got. Why does this look like so much more complex than I remember it looking? Okay, essentially what this is, I obviously was watching a YouTube tutorial to do this because I suck at geometry nodes, but basically what I want is I just want a bunch of random cubes that exist on a grid. So if I go to edit mode, this is just a plane right here. And then I'm using sound nodes, which I mentioned in the first video, which is a paid add-on, but it is fantastic. And I'm just getting a random value for the scale from that. And I am also getting that for the beats, average loudness for the rotation. So it kind of just like twitches with the sound, which I like. And then for the geometry, I'm getting this this cube here, which is that cube I mentioned. So it's literally just a cube, that's it. And then I'm also getting the density of where all these cubes are based on the loudness of bin 2, which usually, I'll be honest, I still haven't figured out which bin means which frequency range. I just sit there and poke them in until it looks the coolest. If you're using sound nodes, that's all I do. And then here, I'm just getting the UV map of the geometry. I'm using that for the mesh. I have a grid here, which I'm using for the distribute points on faces. And then I'm just instancing that on points. So this isn't actually using the original like grid. But it basically just gives me all these cubes, and I'll just kind of go through and show you how they change over time. So they start off, and yeah, and they just kind of glitch in and out of frame, and they're really just there for looks and for more lighting. Lighting is very important, at least to me. Yeah, and that's the whole entire first scene of SYN, and I'll just play it in its entirety here real quick. So you have the beginning where everything kind of backs up, and then it's revealed. Oh, and I'll go over the texture on the text as well. It's very simple texture setup. Yep, but then if you listen to the full visuals, like all those cubes are in time and everything, so it's really cool. Yeah, then it changes back to the orange. And that's basically it. It just pulses a little bit, and then I did a little bit of video editing to add the red back in at the end. So in the shading tab, if we look at the text here, basically it's just two emission shaders with a mix on it, a mix shader, and that's just animated to do the quick switch between the orange and the red. And then also the strength of the orange is adjusted so that way you get it kind of turning on. If you're using Blender, I don't know if you have this, but like for me, like emission textures turning on sometimes isn't that good. That's why I had to add that block, because usually it's like it's almost feels binary. Like once it gets to a certain threshold, it just becomes bright, and then it gets brighter from there. So I'm not the biggest fan of that, but that's why I had to use that cube to cover it up. Another shader we have is just a black color. I don't really know why I did that, but I did. It's just a black, and then I have a wave texture animated, so that way it's like kind of hard to tell exactly what it is yet, and then it eventually gets so dense that it's very obvious that it's the word SYN with those letters. And yeah, that's all that is. And I believe the same exact material is applied to these cubes here. So that's the first project in SYN. And I think after this, we can look at some of the first visuals in Amalgamation as well, because they have some fun particle systems. Alrighty, this is the scene for the very beginning of Amalgamation, and I'm still not sure how I'm going to be doing this series 100%. If I'm going to be going through every single scene, because there is a unreal amount of, there's like 100 scenes throughout the whole entire thing, and so I don't really want to I feel like people don't care enough for me to go through all 100 scenes, and I don't think I have the time. But I'll go through this scene, and I'll go through most of the beginning scenes, and then I think I'll just start skipping out on stuff if it is too similar to a previous scene. I think that makes the most sense. So this is the scene for the very beginning of Amalgamation, and I'll show you what it looks like if it wants to run while I'm running OBS. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. And this right here is the camera. So basically I have a particle system. You can see it looks a lot nicer when I actually pause it. And then it basically just kind of goes along a track. And that's it. As you can tell, this was my very first scene I did after doing boot sequence, so I wasn't really sure. I was still kind of getting my feet wet in making these visuals, because again, this is my first big project making visuals. So I was thinking it was going to go for much longer, and it turned out not to go for much longer. But let's go over the individual elements of this scene. It's, again, pretty simple. So first off, the main feature of this is a particle system. So it's just emitting from this plane right here, and I have a couple of forces acting on it to get it to behave how I want. So I have like 3 turbulences just hanging out over here, and then I also have a vortex that it's being pulled towards. And after that, I have a really, really, really strong, you can tell that's super strong. What's the strength I want to see? Let's see. 20. Okay, that's actually not terrible. Yeah, and a wind force to push it in the right direction. One thing I used a lot during this project was just messing with particles and just applying a bunch of forces to them until they kind of did something cool. And so I got this really cool kind of snaky effect that you can see when everything starts going. Let's see, you cannot even see it in that view, but you can see it in this view. So yeah, I get a cool kind of twist snake thing, and then these particles, I like doing weird particles, so I designed this little guy right here, and you can barely see him in the final product, but it makes the lighting different than if you just used like a UV sphere or a cube with like an emission texture on it. I thought it added a little more texture to the final product, because one thing I tend to agree with is like if you have something detailed, it's going to look better far away than if you just make something undetailed that's far away. You know, I mean, you can usually get away with undetailed stuff far away, but it just depends on what you're doing. And this here is, let's go see what's going on with this guy. No geometry nodes. Is it a shading thing? It is a shading thing. Okay, I have a principled volume here. That's what it is. So I have a volume here. It is set to probably ridiculously low, knowing me. Let's see. Yeah, 0.02. I like adding the volume just because it makes the lights look better, typically. And that's pretty much all I use the volume for, is if something looks like it was rendered in like a vacuum, I usually don't like that. So I like to add the volume to feel like it's actually taking up some space. And then this plane here is going to be a classic, I displaced it so you can see the bumps. Let's see how subdivided this is. Yeah, it's about that big. And then I just have an array modifier making it longer. And here is the node setup for it. I had some rock textures I was thinking about using, didn't really like them, ended up going with a pretty basic Voronoi texture for a bump. And then if you've watched Ducky 3D, you know all about noise texture into color ramp into roughness, which just makes it so it doesn't look so uniform. And again, same thing with the boot sequence stuff. It's all about the lighting. Like, it's all about getting like these weird reflections. And I like the Voronoi because it kind of contrasts the smoothness of the particle system and you get more jagged reflections, which I think is cool. And lighting setup here, we just got some lights doing not too much. It's just like this kind of red light going throughout to match my color scheme again. And over here you can see is the, oh my god, press the wrong hotkey. I don't have a numpad, so lots of the really, really useful Blender hotkeys I just don't have. But that is the particle right there. And that's all that's in this scene. Again, keep it simple, stupid. And really the only thing I'm keyframing is the camera. That's pretty much it, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, that's scene numero uno. Alright, here we are in scene 2 of Amalgamation. I'm just going to keep on trucking because I think each of these is going to be about 20 minutes long, and that's cool with me. This one shows off a couple concepts that I start using more. You'll notice if you watch the videos or the visuals, I literally get better over time because like I wasn't very experienced in Blender when I first started this, and then the further I get, the better it gets. Which I really enjoy watching, at least for me personally, to show that I've actually improved a little bit. But this is a combination of a couple things. Now, I'll be honest, I wasn't super happy with how this one turned out, but like I've mentioned before, I had a month to do this. I had to keep moving. The motion blur was the problem here. So this is kind of an issue you'll run into if you do a lot of audio reactive stuff. So if I render out a frame here real quick, let's see if this even works while I'm, okay, yeah, here we go. You'll see all this really aggressive motion blurring. And this is something I would say to avoid. For me, it was just too much. Like, it was just crazy. And no matter what I did, I tried. If you have any tips for this, besides just turning motion blur off, which I didn't want to do, please let me know in the comments. I was adjusting shutter speed, background separation, max blur, steps, all that stuff, and it still came out really crazy. If you're a motion blur Blender professional, please do let me know how you fix that. I bet you the answer is just don't use such crazy fast moving stuff. So there's basically only two elements to this setup here. Is this middle particle system with these. I love these particles though. I really like those guys. That's just an icosphere with a little bit of editing done. So it's this middle setup here, which is a particle system, again with like a vortex and some turbulence going on. Oh, just a vortex. Empties for camera focus. Yep, just a vortex, just a light shining under it to make it so you can see it. Get the light right there. Yeah, and that way it's clear in the scene, and again you can see I have fog. This time I just did the world fog, I'm pretty sure. And then I have these cubes that are randomly lit up. And like, in my opinion, if you scrub through this, it looks a lot cooler without the motion blur, you know? So I might have should have just turned it off. But this is what it looks like. Let's go into the geometry node setup. So it is very simple. It's just two of these guys. I just duplicated it. So again, I'm using the spectrogram. You'll notice lots of times I'm throwing a math node after the spectrogram, and that is because it really usually gives you values of just like between 0 and 1. And so you have to kind of take like map ranges or math nodes or something like that to kind of stretch it out to exactly what you need. So as you can see, it's adjusting the size, so how many like points we're getting per thing. And then we have an instance on points referencing a cube, and then I just have some randomness and stuff and some input from the sound nodes determining the size and scale of those. And I have specific like vectors, so I wanted them to be a little taller, so I made sure the X or the Z axis was a little stretched out here, and that kind of stayed consistent. And then this gradient texture does something. This is a Ducky 3D tutorial. This is a Ducky 3D tutorial, by the way. So I'll link it below if you want to know how to make a much better looking version of this without all the craziness. But really, like if I take out the audio reactivity, it looks great. But the jitteriness of it is something I had to learn how to combat, which I hadn't really learned yet in this video. Now, camera rigging, This is one of my favorite super L simple camera rigs ever. It is really a combination of 3 elements. You have the camera, you have an empty, and you have a Bezier circle, or like a curved circle. So what these 3 elements do is if I go into the constraints tab, which is, the constraints tab is so useful once you figure it out, which I still haven't figured it completely out because there's so many that hurt my brain. But I just have a follow path with the Bezier circle as a target, and I'm just changing the offset. Basically, if you do it, if you keyframe the beginning as 0 and the end is 100, you'll get a perfect loop. Which I didn't really want a perfect loop, but I wanted it to go in a full circle, so that's what I did. And then track 2, which is just, hey, look at this, to the empty. So that way it's going in a circle and it's constantly looking right here. And I forget if I keyframe this Bezier circle or not. Let's see. I don't believe I did. Sometimes I'll keyframe it to go up and down so you get like some cool like up and down camera movements. I start doing that later in my visual path. But yeah, that's basically the setup for this. The shading on this is kind of cool. Let me find it. Yeah, so this is a super awesome setup right here. You'll see it all the time. Basically what it is you get an object info, get the random output, and put it into a color ramp and set the interpolation to constant. I think this is, yeah, interpolation to constant. And basically it just randomly selects certain cubes or certain of whatevers in your instance on points to be one color and one to be another. And I just set that to the emission and then just did a classic noise texture color ramp for the roughness. That's all that's going on. And then for these particles here, they are using, not that texture, I don't know what that is. Let's see. Let's find our textures. Here they are. It's literally just it's 2 separate textures. One good thing to do when doing textures is just like if you want a certain section to be a different texture and you're doing like a simple like extrude like this, like just once you do the extrude, just immediately make a new texture, add it. But yeah, that's how I got the little glow going on. And you'll notice in the final visuals, if you watch it, there's like a weird circle in the middle. That is called Fix It in Post. The original renders, if you look at them, I think I did a render, right? Yeah, so you could see, depending on the shot, you can see kind of the emitter in the middle, and I didn't want you to see the emitter, so I added like a spherical blur thing in DaVinci Resolve that fixed that right up. And besides that, there's just a tiny little bit of lens distortion and the compositing, and now that's everything. I think that is all I'll cover in this video today, just these first 3 scenes. If you have any feedback for me on how I should be doing these videos, or like what specific things you would want to see, how fast you want me to go, etc., please let me know in the comments. I'm very, very, very new to doing YouTube, and this is my first ever series doing Blender stuff. So I don't know if there's certain things that I like should have definitely mentioned, or if I'm just like, you know, being a complete idiot, which I totally could be. Yeah, but that's the first 3 scenes. We'll go over some more. Let's see, what's today? It'll be Thursday when this video comes out, so next Tuesday. Thank you so much.